should be live. Okie dokie. Well, hello, my name is Pauline Cordiner, and I am a storyteller from the northeast of Scotland. I live in Aberdeen. Now, I'm hoping that somebody can tell me, am I the right way round? I should be. I'm hoping I'm not sidey on, otherwise there's going to be a lot of people with sore necks. So, welcome to Tuck Shop Tales, which is hosted by the Scottish Storytelling Centre. I would like to invite all the boys and girls, all the ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else out there that's watching. So we've got 2 listeners already, that's absolutely super. Today, I think I'm going, oh, somebody's saying something to me. Oh no, it's just that I'm live. I'm hoping someone can tell me, am I the right way round? So I'm going to be telling some stories today about my favourite animals, and I've got one of them here. Frogs. So, just before I start, I'm just going to do a little quick advert for the person that's telling stories next week. You're going to be getting some stories from the wonderful Renita Boyle. And, oh, hello, someone says hello. No, not the right way round. Ah! So have I been the wrong way round? I've been the wrong way round for a while. Is that better? Thank you. How's that? Turn the screen. Yes! Okay, we should be all right. I'm used to filming in landscape. Excellent. Right, well, now that we've got that wee problem sorted out, I'll crack on. And so I'm going to start telling a story. Now, I'd like to know if anyone out there has heard this story before. More people are saying no. Could be a delay. I'm just going to wait that I know that I'm the right way. Someone says better. Thank you very much, Tiggy Brown. Right, okay, we'll crack on then in that case. So, this story is a story that I heard so long ago that I've actually forgotten where I heard it. I did think it was one of Stanley Robertson's, but I asked his son Tony and he thinks it's a Duncan Williamson, so we'll go with that. But once upon a time, there was a great and mighty king. Now, this king, he had 3 sons, as quite often they do in these stories. The first son was tall and handsome and pretty much looked like a prince should. He used to go out on his horse every day riding, being royal, doing the kind of thing that princes do. Prince number 2 was pretty much the same. And then there was the son number 3. And his name was Jack. Well, the thing about Jack was that while his brothers were off being royal, riding, drinking, meeting the ladies, dancing, Jack led a very different kind of life. Jack was quite often off in the fields with the farmers, watching them, getting dirty. The king disapproved of that. Maybe the next day he would be down by the sea watching the fishermen, interested in what they were doing. And maybe the day after that he would be off with the woodsman, wandering about the kingdom. And so the king didn't have much hope at all for Jack. But as they said in the olden days, you would have an heir and a spare, and any other children that came after that, they could more or less go off and do what they wanted. But the time came when the king said to his wife, "My dear, we're going to have to decide who is going to be the next ruler of our kingdom. Which of our 2 sons will we choose?" And she said, "Well, they're very similar, my dear. I think what you should do is you should have a competition." "Great idea," he said. Now, the king decided that the competition would be that they would have to bring him back a present, because this king liked presents quite a lot. And he had a bit of a thought about what he could ask them to go and get. Now, I would like you at home to have a think about the coolest thing that you might want. Molly, my daughter, is here. She's almost 8. Molly, if you were the king and you were going to send your children out to go and bring you back the coolest thing, what could you possibly want?
The best Lego in the world!
The best Lego set in the world. Okay, I like that. Lego roller coaster? Something like that? Lego planet, something brilliant. I know what I used to want. I used to want a mirror that I could hold up, rather like the one in Beauty and the Beast. And in my mind, if I was the king, I would hold up this mirror and it would be able to let me see all my friends and talk to them. But since lockdown, we've discovered we've actually got that. So there you are. I have to think of something else. But I want you to write down in the comments what you might ask if you were the king for the children to bring back. So he gathered the 2 sons in front of him, the 2 oldest sons. And Jack came along as well. And he said, my boys, it is time for me to decide which of you will be the king when I am gone. And Jack said, hang on. Am I included as this as well? And the 2 older brothers looked at Jack and they said, no. You are not the type to be king. But Jack said, I have got just as much a right to be king as you 2. And the king rolled his eyes and the king said, okay, you can join in. Now, boys, what I would like you to do is go out into the world and I would like you to find the finest ring imaginable and bring it back to me. So, the first son went all the way to the top of the highest tower in the castle, and from his pocket he picked a feather. And he held it up to the wind and he said, wind, wind, tell me, which way should I go to find the ring that will allow me to be king? And he let go of the feather and the wind wheeled it from his hand and off it went to the west. And that brother went down to the stables, got on his horse and off to the west he went. And the second brother, he too had gone up that tower and he too had taken a feather from his pocket and he held it up and he said, wind, wind, which way shall I go to find the ring that will let me be king? And the wind wheeled it from his hand and off it went to the east. So Jack thought this was a great idea and he had a look down on the ground where there was a scabby old pigeon feather and he said, wind, wind, which way will I go to learn to be king? And he held it out and he let go. But the wind wasn't there for Jack and instead the feather floated all the way down, and Jack saw it land on the ground. And he thought, oh well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And he went all the way down the stairs and he went outside and he saw that the feather had landed on this metal grating, kind of like a drain cover. And he'd never noticed it before, but Jack lifted it up and instead of there being a water drain down there with lots of water or something worse going past, there was a set of stairs. And there was actually some sort of glimmering light down there. So off Jack went down the stairs. And he went down and down and down deep into the earth beneath the castle. And when he got to the bottom of the stairs, here was this tunnel stretching out in front of him into the earth, and every so often there was a lantern so he could see where he was going. Well, he walked and he walked and he walked and it seemed like an age, but in front of them was this great big wooden door and he opened it with a creak. And he peeked round the corner and he saw this great big chamber, and at the end of the chamber there was a throne. And sitting in that throne was the ugliest looking crater he'd ever seen in his whole life. But the whole of the chamber was loping and jumping with this ruler's servants and this ruler's people. And as Jack looked around, they weren't that bonny either, because there were frogs. But they'd started to notice him. And so they all turned and looked at him, and the king of the frogs up on his throne at the other end of the chamber said, come here, boy. And Jack went forward, and the king smiled at Jack and said, what are you doing here? And Jack told him the challenge that his father had set. Well, said the king, I could give you a ring, but you have to work for me and you have to work hard. And Jack said, I am willing to do that. And the king gestured to this big wooden door on his left-hand side and he said, through there are my coal mines. If you work for me there for 1 month without giving up, it's hard, dirty work. But if you do it, then I'll give you the most beautiful ring. Jack rolled up his sleeves and in he went. And it was hard work. Every day he worked. Well, he presumed from dawn till night. He didn't know because there were no windows. No way to see the daylight outside. But at the end of every day, his bones ached and he was filthy. But every night, the king's daughter, who was also a frog, would come to him and she would wash his skin and massage it and take care of him and give him nice food, and she would talk to him all night long. And he thought, well, she wasn't quite as ugly as the king. She had a few less of those funny warty lumps, you know. But at the end of the month, Jack had worked so hard for the king that the king of the frogs was very pleased, and he handed him this ring. Now, this ring was so delicate and so beautiful that Jack gasped and he said, "Thank you, your majesty, thank you." And he smiled at the king's frog daughter and he said, "And thanks to you for looking after me." And away he went. Back along the corridor, up the stairs, and back to the castle. Now, the two brothers had arrived a week before and they were saying to their father, "Jack's never coming back. Make one of us king. Father, make the decision." And the king, yeah. But the mother said, "No, that's not fair. You have to wait till Jack comes back." And right enough, in Jack came. And the two brothers had brought out their rings and they were beautiful with great big stones. But when Jack brought out the ring that the king of the frogs had given him, the king's jaw dropped open because it was the most delicate thing that he'd ever seen, beautifully created with a great big green stone, an emerald. And the king said, "Jack, where did you get something like that?" And the two brothers immediately said, "Father, you cannot choose Jack just because he happened to find a green, beautiful ring. We must have another competition." So the king sat. The king scratched his chin and he looked over to the dining table where they would have their banquets, and he saw that their old tablecloth was getting a wee bit scabby. So he said, "Right, boys, I want you to find me the finest tablecloth known to man." "Okay," said the brothers. Here was another chance for them to be king. So off they went. They went up that tall tower. First brother took a feather from his pocket, held it up and said, "Wind, wind, take me this feather and show me which direction I should go if I were to get the best tablecloth and be king." And the wind whisked it out of his hand. Off it went to the west, and off went the first brother. The second brother picked a feather out of his pocket. "Wind, wind, take this feather from me. Take it to where I will find the best tablecloth in the world." And the wind squeaked it out of his hand. Off it went to the east, and off went the second brother. And Jack bent down, picked up a scabby old pigeon feather, said, "Wind, wind, take this to where I will find the finest tablecloth in the world." And he dropped it, he let go of it, and of course the wind was not there for Jack, and the feather went down, 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 down. And it landed on that funny metal grating, that thing that looked like a drain cover again. So Jack lifted it up, placed it behind him, and went down, down, down the stone steps, along the long, long corridor, deep, deep, deep into the depths of the earth, until he finally came to the wooden door, and he opened up the door, and here was the king of the frogs, and this time sitting by his side was the beautiful daughter. And the king of the frogs said, "Hello, Jack, you're back." And Jack said, "Yeah." And he explained about the feather and how he'd been taken there again, and how this time he had to get the world's most beautiful tablecloth. "Okay," said the king of the frogs, scratching a particularly warty lump on his forehead. I can do that for you. But for me, Jack, you have to work for a whole month down my salt mines. It'll be hard work, and the salt will hurt your skin and crack it and dry it. But if you're willing," and Jack said, "I'm willing." So for a whole month, Jack worked in these mines for the king, but every night when he was finished working, the king's daughter, the beautiful frog, would clean his skin and rub oils into it, and they would talk late into the night. Jack always had energy to see her. And at the end of the month, the king beckoned Jack and he said, "Jack, you have worked wonderfully for me and I'm going to give you this." And Jack said, "But that's a walnut." And the king said, "Yeah, but inside is your tablecloth." Jack said, "Thank you so much." And he looked at the king's daughter and he said, "And thank you so much." And she smiled and she waved and off Jack went. Back along the corridor, back up the stone stairs, up to the castle, and by now the two brothers had been there. They'd arrived 2 weeks before and they were nagging their father. "Dad, just make a decision." But the wife, the queen, said, No, we must wait for Jack." And when Jack arrived and the two brothers could show off their beautiful tablecloth, one from far off to the east made of silk with beautiful peacock designs, the other one from the west made of a material the king had never seen, and it was beautiful, and then Jack handed him a nut. "What is this?" said the king. "Your tablecloth is within," and the two brothers just about fell about the floor laughing. "Our brother doesn't know the difference between a nut and a tablecloth." But when the king cracked it open and he brought out a tablecloth so delicate, yet there was more of it, and it was strong and it was beautiful, and Jack thought it glistened like it was made out of spider web itself. It was so beautiful. And the king smiled and said, "Jack, where did you find this?" But before the king had the chance to say anything more, the brothers said, Father, you must give us another chance." And the king sighed because he still suspected that his son Jack was a wee bit useless, you know. So he had a wee quick conflab with his wife, because wives know best, and he said to the sons, "You cannot be king unless you have a woman to help you, to guide you. I want you to go out," because he was the king, he said, "to find the most beautiful woman to be your wife." And immediately off went the two older brothers, up the stairs. Wheek went the feather to the west, wheek went the feather to the east. Jack picked up his scabby old pigeon feather off the ground, dropped it. There was no wind for Jack, and down it floated, and it landed on the grating. Jack knew full well where he was going, and it was with a big smile that he went down the wooden steps, down through the deep earth along that corridor to the big wooden door. He opened it up, and there was the king and the king's daughter, looking more beautiful than any frog has ever looked. "What are you doing here this time?" said the king of the frogs. And Jack said, "I have to find a wife." "I don't think you'll find a wife here," said the king. No, said Jack. "The competition this time is that I have to find the most beautiful wife." "I don't think you'll find a beautiful human wife here," said the king. "I don't care if she's human," said Jack. "I would like to marry your daughter." And the king smiled at Jack and he said, "You are very, very welcome, Jack. But to marry my daughter, you will have to work in my sulphur mine for a month." Now, I don't know if you know what sulphur is out there in the world, but I used to be a chemist, and it's this yellow material, yellow element, which you use to make acid. And I think that's basically all you need to know. It's very, very hard working in a sulphur mine. But off Jack went and he worked there for a month, and every night when he'd finished, she was there, the king's daughter, the frog princess, and she would wash his skin and rub oil into it, and they would talk deep into the night. And so at the end of the month, the king of the frogs smiled and said, "Jack, you take her for your bride." And this time Jack turned and he picked her up, and up he went, along the corridor, up the stone steps, and returned to the castle. And when he got there, he found that the brothers, they had the most beautiful woman by their sides. One of them with the deepest, darkest skin with black curls, the other one with greenest eyes and auburn ringlets. And the king looked at Jack when he came in and said, "Well, where's your wife?" And Jack brought out the frog and said, This is who I would like to marry, father. And the brothers just about fell about on the floor laughing. And so did the other two princesses, because they were princesses, of course. But the queen said, my dear, are we going to judge Jack's bride on looks alone? And she whispered in the king's ear. And the king said, certainly, certainly. Oh, of course, of course. The girls must show their abilities to a certain extent. I suggest a race. A race, said the brothers. Yes, yes, said the king. They must run from the stables over to the moat. The princesses looked at each other. They weren't much used to running, but they supposed they could take off their beautiful slippers and run across the grass for a bit of a laugh. Then, said the king, they must swim across the moat, and then they must run all the way up to the top of the tower, and the princess who gets there first wins. Fantastic, said the princesses. Great, said the brothers, looking at the frog. How could a mere tiny frog win? And the brothers ran down the steps, and quick as anything, they put some trip hazards, some loops of wire into the grass, because this poor little frog was so short that she couldn't see what was ahead in front of her. The king and the queen were there. The queen said, I will say go. The king was at the top of the tower, and the queen said, ready, steady, go, and off ran the two princesses at full pelt. The poor little frog princess hopped and struggled through the deep grass, tripping and getting tangled up in the wire that the brothers had left behind. But then she reached the moat. And while the princesses were already splashing and swimming ahead, this was where the little frog started to catch up. And she swam with her strong back legs. And when she reached the other side, the princesses were just running up that tall turret. Of course, the frog princess took one leap and got there first. Jack was already waiting there with open arms. And the king patted Jack on the back and said, well done, my lad. And that was when Jack kissed the princess. And of course you all know what's going to happen. She turned into her human form, because the king of the frogs and his whole kingdom had long been under the spell of a wicked, wicked wizard. Jack married the princess. Jack became king, and the previous king soon learned that you needed a little bit more than good looks and charm to be the king. You need to know about your people. You need to love them. And that was the end of that story. But it can't be, because we haven't told you that they all lived happily ever after. There we go. So, do we have time for another story? It's funny, I can't actually see the time on my... Oh, wait, we've got 7 minutes! 7 minutes. So we're going to do another story, and I think we're going to stick with the frog theme. This is one of the first stories that I ever learned, and it's from Australia, and it's the story of a very greedy frog. Because as you probably all know, frogs nowadays, and we'll pick up our little princess again, I've got big, massive, wide mouths. They have got long, springy legs. And you can't really see here, but they've got big bellies, kind of like me after lockdown. So, but back in the day, way back at the beginning of time, it wasn't so. You see, the first frog that ever lived was called Tiddalik. Tiddalik was tall, and Tiddalik was thin, and he had a very small mouth like this. You see? He used to speak like that. But the thing about Tiddalik wasn't all that. It was his singing voice, which everyone loved. And every morning he would yawn and he would stretch, and he would go... And all the animals would go, oh, Tiddalik, that's just wonderful. Go on, dear Snithery, go on. And he would puff himself up a bit at this, and he would go, and all the animals thought it was wonderful. And if it was someone's birthday and they show off. I don't know anyone like that. Well, there was this one day that Tiddalik woke up, and the thing is, his throat hurt a fair bit. He'd been overdoing it with the singing, I think. Now, what do you do when your throat hurts? What would you do? You maybe rest it for a little while? He would have some water. So, Tiddalik looked around and he found a puddle and he drank up the water in the puddle. And he opened up his mouth to sing. Clearly, he hadn't drank enough water. So he made his way over to the pond. And he got down by the pond and he thought, look at this cold, clear water. Now, his tummy was starting to feel a little bit full here. And he opened up his mouth and he tried to sing. And he looked at the water and the rest of the pond and he thought, well, I may as well finish it as well. So he started to drink that up. So where could he go to get more water? Well, he knew that there was the great wide lake, and this was the lake where all of the animals would come down in the morning to wash, to drink. And so down he hopped and he sat in the reeds at the side of the great wide lake and he started to drink, and he drank. Tiddalik had drank all of the water in the lake. It was all inside him, and it had stretched out his cheeks and his face so much that he looked like that, and it filled his body, and his body was absolutely gigantic, and it stretched out like this in front of him, and his legs, oh, he was now so heavy that his legs bent down, and worse than that, Tiddalik knew that he couldn't open up his mouth, because if he opened up his mouth, what would happen? All of the water would go gushing back out into the world, and he wanted that beautiful singing voice back. So he kind of half-hopped. That's two Scottish words together, isn't it? I was going to say louped, and then I decided I was going to say hopped, so I said houped. I think I've invented a new word. He louped, he sort of half-hopped, half-logged over underneath a tree, and then he sat down. But of course, as you out there know, what happens when there's no water? What happens to the plants? Molly, what happens to the plants?
They die.
They die. What? Yeah, Molly's flopping down like this. What happens to the flowers? They die. What happens to the trees? Their leaves crumple up and go brown. But what happens to the animals, the insects, the birds? They had nothing to drink and nothing to eat, and they were all hungry and thirsty. So all the animals got together and they said, what has happened to our earth? Where has all the water gone? Why has there been such a sudden change? It's so hot and we're so thirsty. And they decided that they would have to leave that land and go and find somewhere else to live. And they all got together and they said, maybe the walk would be a lot easier if Tiddalik sang to us. Yeah, Tiddalik. Where is Tiddalik? Has anyone seen him? Have you seen him? Have you seen him? Have you seen him? Nobody had seen him. So all the animals went off to find their friend, and eventually it was a wee spider who found him. Spider had climbed to the top of the tree and he'd looked down and he'd seen Tiddalik. He went off and found the animals. The animals came and they saw Tiddalik underneath the tree with his mouth full, with his tummy full. And they said, Tiddalik, You looking different? Have you seen where the water went? Are you sure? Are you sure you're sure? Tiddalik, they said, you drank the water, didn't you? You did, didn't you? Tiddalik, admit it. Did you drink all the water? Well, why? We're all hungry and we're all thirsty. Please, please, give it back. And Tiddalik thought about his beautiful singing voice. He folded his arms and he said, and they begged with him and they pleaded with him, Tiddalik, please, please, give us back the water. But Tiddalik could only think of his beautiful singing voice and he said, So the animals, they started to walk away. They knew they would have to walk hundreds of miles to a new land. And they turned and they gave him one last look. And there was a little lizard running along. And that little lizard turned and went, It was quite funny. Despite the situation, Tiddalik almost laughed. And the lizard noticed this. Now, Chicken was second to the last in the line of the animals that was leaving, and Chicken noticed this too, and Chicken turned round and went, and then Tiddalik went, Monkey was third last in the line of the animals that were leaving, and he came back and he went and started doing cartwheels, and the lizard went up to Chicken and he took a feather out of the chicken's bottom, and the chicken went Tiddalik. We're almost there, thought the monkey. Quick, tickle him with the feather. And the lizard took the feather and the lizard went, Coochie coochie coo, coochie coochie coo. And like laughed and laughed and laughed until, well, you've guessed it, all of the water came gushing out of his mouth, back into the great wide lake, back into the ponds and back into the puddles. And the animals had their water again, and the plants had their water again, and the flowers began to bloom, and the trees began to stretch their leaves back up to the sky. But as for Tiddalik the frog, well, he never did get rid of that big, stretchy green tummy. He still has those funny bent legs. And as for that tiny mouth, it's now wide like this. You've heard of the wide-mouthed frog? That's why frogs' mouths are wide. Arr. They always hang around water today, just in case it's their last chance to drink. And nobody has ever heard a frog since Tiddalik go. And that's the story of Tiddalik the frog. So, thank you very much, everybody, for listening to Tuck Shop Tales today. My name is Pauline Cordiner, and you can find me on Facebook at Pauline Cordiner, a Scottish storyteller. I've also been working with some Scottish storytellers, British storytellers, European storytellers around the world at Tuck Shop Tales, which you can find on Facebook. And also please have a look at the World Storytelling Cafe, where there are hundreds of storytellers from all over the world. Thank you so much to the Scottish Storytelling Centre for having me along. And don't forget that the fantastic Renita Boyle is going to be doing Tuck Shop Tales next Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much. Are you going to say goodbye? Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.